Okay, so I wanted to share with you a question that I get a lot from my students who do Self from Stage Academy or other students that I've trained, really all around how do you get the right balance of content when you're presenting on a live stage, maybe at a speaking event or on a webinar. Have you ever found this challenge? Let me know below, just write challenge if you've ever felt the difficulty, and especially if you're watching the replay, just put replay down below. If you've ever felt that difficulty, that tension of finding the right balance of content, because this is the thing I know about you. For those of you who, I get a lot of people who follow me who are very much like heart driven. So, you know, they're not in it just to make money. Sure, money's great to be made and that's a byproduct, but at the core of it, they're there because they want to serve, they want to make a difference, right? And one of the challenges is that when you come in to do, this could be a video, it could be a webinar, it could be a speech, a presentation. One of the tensions that you're going to experience, and if you haven't experienced this yet, you're going to experience it, is this tension of really working out how much content do I need to put into this presentation so that people walk away and they really feel like they got value from the presentation. However, you didn't provide too much content so that at the end they leave and they're like, hey, I don't need anything else from you. I've got enough to action for the next year. I don't need your program. Have you ever found that tension? Just write the word challenge or tension down below. Let me know if you've experienced that tension before, because what I want to share with you today is three principles, three ideas, I think concepts that will really help you to understand how to provide a presentation that provides incredible value, but also enrolls students into the next step with you. So you might be running a free training, you might be doing a training series like a video series, you may be doing a presentation, a workshop, any sort of like stage delivery. This is going to be applicable too. Does that make sense? And so the three shifts you need to do, and this is all part of what we call infusion speaking. And infusion speaking is really just about how do you speak in a way that sells your ideas and it's also valuable. And so infusion speaking is, it's based around, first of all, these three principles. The first one, the first principle, the first idea that you have to master is this. Is when you speak, you have to create identity tension. Identity tension. Now, one of the big shifts that you need to make if you want to become a really persuasive communicator is realizing that when people join your programs, they actually aren't joining a program. What they are joining, and this is what the most effective influencers, thought leaders, speakers do. This is what they do. They realize that the audience is not enrolling in a program. They are enrolling in an identity. Does that make sense? So when they join your program, or when they join whatever program you're offering, for me it's Self from Stage Academy, when they join my program, they're not actually joining a program. They're joining an identity of someone who can communicate effectively, confidently, provide value, and also grow their business and create clients through it. Does that make sense? And so for you, I just wonder what that identity is. Like, what's the identity that they are enrolling in? And what you have to do is you have to create identity tension. Now, identity tension is really when you're stretching that gap between what does someone who's really struggling in your industry look like compared to someone who is really successful in your industry. You need to create identity tension. Now, identity tension is really where you're identifying the challenges, the difficulties, the mishaps, the mistakes that people who struggle in your identity compared to the people who are successful in your industry, and the beliefs, the results, the desires that they have, and the production that they have when they are successful. Does that make sense? So you need to create identity tension. That's the first thing that you need to provide if you want to effectively speak in a way that sells. The second thing you need to do is you need to shift misbeliefs. Now, this is one of the biggest ones that people don't do well. What you must identify if you ever want to build an expert business and you ever want to be a successful speaker, if you ever want to run successful webinars, is that part of the value of the training that you're offering is when you're shifting beliefs. Now, there are misbeliefs or misguided beliefs. People in a coaching language would call it like limiting beliefs. There are misguided beliefs that people have in your industry about what you teach. And so for me, all around speaking on a stage and selling on a stage, a misguided belief for me is that people think that speaking is education. They think that speaking is entertainment. Now, yes, it can be that. But if you want to be a successful expert business owner, if you want to be a successful coach, a successful course creator, the shift you need to make is realizing that when you speak, you're actually selling. Now, not selling from a pushy perspective, but you're essentially selling an idea. You're selling an identity. And selling at the core of what selling is a beautiful integrate process of realizing that you are truly understanding and appreciating the desires, the challenges, the difficulties, the inner hopes of your audience, and you're speaking directly into those in a really authentic and engaging way. Does that make sense? And so the big shift for me when I'm teaching is that people need to realize that speaking is not just education, it's not just entertainment, because if you think speaking is entertainment, you're going to get lots of claps, but you're not going to get many clients. Does that make sense? So the shift you need to make is that speaking is selling. Now, I wonder, what is your shift? And if you're watching the replay, let me know down below, what is a misguided belief that your industry believe that you need to really shift or realign when you speak? Does that make sense? Now, do not underestimate the power of this, because one of the big reasons why people get to the end of your presentation and don't join your program is because they still have misguided beliefs. Now, what you need to do is you need to work out what those beliefs are, and when you realign them during your presentation, this is actually really valuable for the listeners. Because what we think a lot of the time is that people need all the how-to content. It's like, I need to give them all the how-to. Now, the reason why people don't have results in whatever you're teaching is not because they don't have the how-to. Because I tell you what, you can jump on YouTube and find how-to videos for almost anything. So the reason that people don't have results is not necessarily the how-to. Now, do they need the how-to? Yes, they do. But before they need the how-to, they need to realign their beliefs so that when they get the how-to, they can actually implement it. Does that make sense? And so the value of realigning beliefs is incredible. And you as an expert business owner, must understand the value of realigning beliefs. Because if you don't, you're not going to present beliefs and realign beliefs effectively. And that is going to really stop the conversion and the value that you're seeing in your trainings. So the first one we talked about is you need to build identity tension. The second one is you need to realign misbeliefs, or you need to shift misbeliefs. Does that make sense? And by the way, if you're watching the replay, I'd love you to kind of write these principles down or write them below, just so that people get them easily as we're going through. The third thing you need to do, and this is huge, the third thing you need to do is you need to create clarity of decision. Clarity of decision. Now, what most people think that their presentation is about, especially if you're a keynote speaker. Now, I've been a paid keynote speaker for over 10 years. Like, I've delivered international conferences, Fortune 500 companies, large entrepreneurial events. Like, I've spoken and been paid for over 10 years as a speaker. And this is the big shift. This is the big shift that you need to make when it comes to speaking, is realizing that the power of a good speaker is someone who gets the audience to make a decision. Because this is the thing, is that you can't necessarily, and I say this with a bit of, a bit of like softness, you can't necessarily change someone's life completely in about 40 minutes. Now, can you inspire them? Can you encourage them? Absolutely. But it's very rare that you're going to be able to completely fundamentally change their life in 40 minutes in a presentation. However, what you can do is start like a domino effect in your presentation. And if you do this properly, especially if you are running a webinar or you're doing a keynote that sells people into your programs, if you can create clarity of decision, in other words, their decision, their clarity of commitment to themselves and to the next level of what they're providing, if you can create clarity of decision, that is leading the domino effect of changing their life. Does that make sense? And so down here is like all the how-to, the practicals, but the first domino that you need to hit is the decision. And so the reason why your audience are not seeing results in the area that you help them in is not because they don't have the how-to. The how-to is down here. You'll get to the how-to, but the reason why is because they haven't created full commitment. They haven't created enough clarity of decision to knock that over, which gets to the how-to eventually, and there's a whole bunch of like things that you need to knock over to completely change their life. Does that make sense? And so when you're delivering, I want you to think about these three things. Is really creating tension between the identities, between the struggling person and the successful person in your industry. I want you to think about realigning the beliefs, the misbeliefs that your audience has, because when you realign those beliefs, then they're going to be ready to actually join. Now, one of the best ways to realign beliefs also is to share story, So what I mean by that is that's your signature story. That could be client stories. The more you share story throughout your presentation, it will create tension in the identities, it will realign beliefs, and it will help people to get to making a decision, because story transfers belief. Does that make sense? And so the second idea that we talked about was really around shifting the beliefs, shifting the misbeliefs, and the third one is creating clarity of decision. And so the big mistake is that people make their presentation about education, about entertainment, about all these things, but it needs to be about clarity of decision, and that is valuable. Now, what I'd love to hear is down below, what's been most valuable from our conversation that we've had today? And second of all, if you're really serious, if you are really serious about stepping up your game and infusing your story into your next presentation in a way that does these three things, you have got to grab my Sell With Story Guide. So if you go to sellwithstoryguide.com, literally, if you just type in Sell With Story Guide into Google, it'll come up. Go to sellwithstoryguide.com, grab the guide, because it's going to be super useful for you to infuse your story and your client stories and do these three things that will really create shifts in your webinars and in your trainings. Now, hey, I hope this has been valuable. I trust it has. And please let me know, what's been most helpful. And if you've got any questions about this, let me know down below. I'd love to help, love to serve you guys. Bless you all. Grab the sellwithstoryguide.com, and I look forward to talking soon. Yo, yo. I don't know what I was doing with the yo, yo, yen. Yen? It's like I'm some like weird rapper. I'm not a rapper at all. All right? Bless you guys. Bye. I will press this button eventually.